Hi, my name is Solano. I work for Conte's bike shop here in Washington, D.C. And today we will be changing out the tires on the e-scooter.
So here we are in Conte's bike shop. There's a reason for this. There aren't any stores, scooter stores that actually work on the Nami itself, so we have to rely on other partners. And I am no expert. I'm actually mechanically an idiot.
Hey, Rod.
Oh, Denise, what's up?
And so just like you'd want to go to the right doctor, want to go to the right mechanic, and you're definitely the right one.
Well, I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. Fantastic. We're basically going to go through the Nami Burn-E, the tire swap out for the winter. I'm going to be using this throughout the winter season, so definitely want to have it winterized. But I'm very apprehensive about putting the tires on, so that's why we're here, and maybe try to switch out the handlebar as well.
Awesome. So we're going to be starting with a new set of winter tires for the scooter itself, right? The first couple of things we really want to make sure is we're going to lift it off of the ground. In this case, we're using a milk carton. And then we're also going to make sure that it's lifted off of the ground so that we have access to both wheels, right? And then the next thing we're going to do is make sure that it's off in the off position as well. And then we're going to start on the project itself. So here are the tools that we're going to use. We have heavy duty tire levers. These are going to come in really good handy. Bike ones are just too weak, so these heavy duty ones are a lot better.
Excellent.
We have an adjustable wrench for the nuts, a tire seater. This will take the bead off of the rim itself, makes it easier to come off. Optional is a valve remover, but this has been kind of easier for removing the air. We have a 4mm Allen key, a 3mm, heavy duty zip ties, and then LOCTITE to reinstall it back on there.
Excellent.
So the first things we're gonna do is we're gonna grab our 4mm, right? And then we're gonna remove the 4 bolts holding on the mudguard on the backhand side. We're gonna loosen it up with our 4mm. All right, once the mudguard is off, we're gonna make sure that we have all the bolts, set them aside in a little bin. We're gonna pop the fender off. I'm gonna put the bolts aside and then put the fender aside as well. All right, and then now we're gonna grab our adjustable wrench, and then we're going to loosen and remove the nuts all the way out. And then what I like to do is whenever I remove an item, right, we're just gonna set it aside kind of in the order that I took it off. And then we're gonna remove the other nut, loosening that up, removing it all the way. Now we're gonna put it right on the side there. Now we're gonna remove the fender itself by pushing the fender arms out like this. So then we're going to put our fender aside. Now what we're going to do is we're going to grab our 4mm again, and there are 2 silver bolts on the side right here. So we're going to loosen up that one, and that one we're going to remove them all the way out. And then what this is going to do is it's going to give us more room for the wires, right? So you're going to grab your 4mm out, and you're going to have a plate. I just like to put these back on so that I know which one it went to. Put those aside. Again, we're going to remove the one on the top It's a 4 mil. Gonna loosen it up all the way and remove it. Slide the 4 out. Tighten it back down, set it aside. Now we're gonna be in the process of taking off the wheel. There are these safety washers on there, right? We want to, gently wiggle these out and remove them all the way. I'm gonna set that aside. All right, same thing with the other side. Wiggling and removing it and then putting it where it goes. Now this is where we're gonna drop the wheel, right? So we're gonna grab the wheel in the back and the front and kind of, if it's a little stuck, you can wiggle it back and forth and it'll free it up. Now the wheel is dropped. We wanna make sure that we remove the washers. There are 2 washers on this rotor side and 1 washer on the non-rotor side. So we're gonna remove the 2 washers on here. Gonna put those aside. Remove the washer on the non-rotor side and then put that aside as well. And then now we're going to remove the rotor. And the reason we're gonna remove the rotor is because once we're installing the tire back on, the rotor will be in the way. So that's where we're gonna grab our 3 mil Allen key and we're gonna loosen them all, remove them all off of here.
I would have gotten to this point and been like, ah, screw it.
So set those aside. Now removing the rotor itself will give us leverage when installing it, and it also won't damage the rotor when installing the tire.
So again, I want to thank you for taking this challenge on. I mean, I know it's really just the bikes that you're working on, but we have a lot of these places that will sell the scooters, but then what do you do once you get the scooter and you have a mechanical issue? So I can't thank you enough.
Yeah, it's a great scooter. So this one's been a lot easier than others to replace the tires on. All right, so once we remove the last bolt off of here, there will be the items that will come off are the rotor and the rotor spacer. Right, we're going to remove those and set those aside. Now we're going to gently remove the wire from the routing points itself, right? So we're going to wiggle it and it's going to pop right off of there, this little groove here, and we're just going to wiggle it back and forth. Right. Now we got the wheel off of the scooter itself. We're going to remove all of the air off of the tire by loosening or removing the valve cap and then turning it over, and then that will remove all the air off of there. Now there will be some extra air in the tire, and this is where the valve core remover comes in handy. Right, there are 2 sides to it. This is for the straighter side and this is for the presser side. On this one we have a straighter valve. We're going to insert the valve core into the core itself, right? And we're going to loosen it up. You hear some air coming out. Right, and this is the valve core right here. We're going to set that aside for now. And then we're going to grab our tire seater, right? And then what this is going to do is it's going to allow us to pop the bead, right? The tires on here are really tight because it's a tubeless system, so there's no tube inside of there, and the tire is really hard to get off with your hands. So this is going to help us. On the biggest setting, we're going to pop it into the bead here, and you hear the bead kind of pop out. Right there, right? So, and we just want to make sure that we turn the tire and make sure that the bead is off of one side. We're going to flip it over, being careful not to put a lot of strength and friction on the wire itself. We're going to grab our tire seater again, and then we're going to remove the opposite side. All right, awesome. So now we're just gonna make sure that the tire is off of the bead all the way around, right? Now, once we're at this point, we're gonna grab our tire levers, right? And what we're going to do is, there are two sides to the tire levers. There is a hook point, which is kind of here, right? That's the part that's actually gonna hook onto it. And there's the flat side, so we want the hook part. So we're going to pinch the tire into the bead itself. We're gonna grab our tire lever and put it right in between the tire and the bead. Okay? Then we're gonna pull back. Now, a good trick that I've noticed is you can use the mount itself as leverage, right? So we're gonna go this way. All right, so we're using this point as a leverage point. All the way around, popped right off. Right, now the tire is off of the bead on one side. So we're gonna turn over the wheel, we're gonna grab our tire lever, and then now we're gonna have the flat part on the rim part. We're gonna go in between the tire and the rim, and we're gonna push outwards. Once we got it halfway, it'll pop right off, right? Now we're gonna set the tire aside and then put the wheel with the wire sticking out. And then we're gonna put our new tire on. For the new tire, right, we're going to use the tire lever, and then a set of heavy duty zip ties. Right, these are gonna come in handy on stubborn tires, which this particular tire is. It's very stiff.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do is we're going to install it onto the rim and then uninstall one side of the bead on the opposite side. And we'll see why after I did it on the one side. So what we're gonna do is, some tires are directional, right? So there's a direction to the tire. If you looked at the old tire, you can see that there's a tread pattern in almost like a cross, right? So this one will be facing forward. On this particular tire, there's no direction. So you can put it either or, it's not really gonna matter. So we're gonna put the tire on the bottom, right? And then we're gonna grab our motor, or our wheel, I'm sorry. And we're just gonna pop it right into the slot. Now, once you get the rim halfway in, we're gonna grab our tire lever with our hook facing in again, and we're gonna pry the tire onto the rim, like so. All right, so now it's on one side. And then this is where we're going to be removing the tire again, right? So we're gonna grab our tire lever, we're gonna pop it into the bead, being careful not to hit the wire or anything. So let's rotate this, like so. Then we're gonna grab our tire lever, put it into the bead, and then being careful not to go to damage, we're just gonna rotate it slowly. All right, perfect. So now you'll notice that if we flip it over, right, there'd be a little bit of the tire sticking out. So we are going to pop this bead onto the side. And the reason that we do this is, if we had done it the other way around, right, our leverage will be on the wire side and we're not gonna have a lot of room to work with. So by doing it this way, it allows us to put the motor down with the non-wire part sticking down, right? It puts a little less strength on this. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna grab our zip ties, put it into here loosely, And the zip ties, and the reason we want to use the zip ties is on stubborn tires like this, you want to squeeze the beads, both beads, into the rim itself. So the zip ties will help us in that instance. So, all right, so now that the zip ties are on there, we're gonna go back to our tire seater, right? I'm gonna grab it, put it in its biggest, right? Squeeze it as far down as you can. Grab the zip tie, and then we're going to tie it as tight as possible. All right, so there's one. You can rotate the wheel. Grab our second zip tie. Yeah. So now we're gonna add our third zip tie on there. All right, push the bead in, grab our tire lever, and then put it in there, and then start prying that tire in. I'm gonna rotate it a little bit, right? And when doing this, right, you want to make sure that you're doing a little bit at a time, right? Doing a little bit at a time will help you out. If necessary, you can grab another tire lever, right? Put it into the bead as well. And then towards the end, just gonna pry both of them in, just like that, right? We're gonna remove our tire levers. And then this is where the zip ties came in handy, right? They squeeze the tire and the bead inside, and that's what we want. Essentially what we're doing is, instead of the bead being this wide, we're squeezing it in because the channel of the rim is a lot bigger on the inside. So it actually concaves inside of itself, right? So once we're done with those, we're gonna cut our zip ties. And then remove them just like so. Cut our second zip tie. Remove it just by sliding it out. Our third zip tie. Being careful not to damage the tire. Pushing it out. So now the tire is seated, right? It's on both sides. The next step is to add air. With tubeless tires like this, we want to put as much air as possible in there. So our air compressor works well. So I'm gonna go and grab my air chuck and then fill it up. You're gonna hear it pop into place. We're gonna lower the pressure down and then reinstall our valve core. So we're gonna grab our air chuck and then we're gonna fill it up with air. All right, in this case, the bead is not seating in. So a good trick is to grab your tire lever, right? And we're gonna pry, we're gonna go back into the tire, right? And we're just gonna move the bead into the roof or the sidewall of the rim itself. All right, perfect. So now it's holding air. And the reason that we didn't put the valve core back on is once I lower the pressure down, so if you look into the valve itself, right, it's a round hole, right? There's nothing blocking it. So once you take the valve core off, right, it allows as max pressure getting into the system. And that's what we want, right? The valve core itself is more of a blockage. It does not allow the foyer. So with tubeless tires, so it's a good idea to remove it. Now that the tire is in the bead, we're going to reinstall our valve core, right? We're going to use the same tool that we did, put it right in there. Then we're going to slide the valve core right in here, and then we're going to tighten it down. And it just has to be snug, right? You don't want to over tighten it. Now we want to pressurize the tire to the recommended pressure. You can find that on the sidewall of the tire itself, right? And it's located right here. And on this particular tire, it's 50 pounds, right? I'm gonna grab our chuck. Going to fill it up. And then now the tire is just gonna go right into the bead because we already set the bead, right? There might be a couple of popping sounds, and that's just the tire itself going into the bead. So 50 pounds, perfect, right? And then you can add the valve cap back on. And then this is the installation of the tire. Now we're just gonna reinstall it back onto the scooter.
Perfect.
Now we're going to reinstall the wheel back onto the scooter. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna move the wheel so that it's upright on the rotor side. We're gonna install the rotor first. For the rotor, you're going to need the rotor spacer, and then the rotor itself, and then the rotor bolts. For the spacer itself, there are two sides to the spacer, right? If you look on this side, there's a little bit of an in-grooved part on there. There's a little part that kind of sticks out, which is the little lip, right? What we want to do is we're gonna have the lip facing out, and then the groove side inside so that it meets with this part. All right, so we're gonna install this onto here, making sure that they're lined up with the holes for the screws. We're gonna grab our rotor with the logo facing out. In this case, it says 160 and an arrow facing, so we're gonna push those out, right? We're going to center those as well. And then now we're gonna grab our bolts. Yep. And then we're just gonna start threading them in. So now we're gonna grab our 3mm again, right? We're just going to snug them up. All right, so once the bolts are snugged up, right, we're gonna fully tighten them down. And when we're tightening down the rotor bolts, we want to go in a star pattern, right? And what that's going to do is gonna evenly tighten the bolts evenly, essentially, right? So we're just gonna start off with this one, right? We're gonna tighten it down, then we're gonna move across straight down to this one. Once we've installed the rotor back on, we're no longer gonna need our 3s, so we can set that aside. And then the next items we're gonna grab are the washers that we removed off of here, right? So on the drive side, or I'm sorry, on the rotor side, we're gonna grab, and there's 2 washers that go on this side, right? We have the thin one and the thicker one. All right, we're gonna put the thin one in first, sliding it into the grooves, and you'll notice that on the washers, there's a little shape to them, right? We just wanna make sure that we just put those on there. So there are 2 washers on the rotor side. We're going to flip the wheel over, and then we're going to install our second washer that goes on the other side, right? And you'll notice that on this side, the wire kind of protrudes a little bit, so the washer's not sitting fully straight. So what we're going to do is we're just gonna gently push the wire back into it, and then that will let it sit down well. Now, we're just gonna reinstall, at this point we can reinstall the wheel back onto there. If you notice, there is flat sides to this. On the scooter itself, there are also flat sides to this that have to match up, right? The wire also has to be looking forward. We don't want the wire in the back position, we want it in the forward position. All right, so now we're gonna grab our scooter, and then our wheel, sorry, and put it back into here. Now we're gonna push our little washers back into the spot here. All right, so now once we got it on there, we can wiggle it into its spot. Then we're gonna grab our locking washers. We're gonna put it into its groove there. We're gonna grab our second one. Put it into the groove there. And then actually we're gonna grab our fender. Yeah. So if you wanna hold the wheel up for me. Awesome. So now we're gonna grab our fender, right? And our fender, we're gonna slide the flat end parts on each side by slightly bending it out, like so. Going to slide these on, and then just make sure that the wheel is fully in the lock. Make sure that the little washers, there's little hooks on the frame for those little washers. We're gonna add blue Loctite to the threads on each side. We're gonna grab our nut and then hand tighten it in. Want it to be snug, right? We want that one to hold it on. Put the next side in. And then now we're gonna fully tighten the wheel down. So we're gonna grab back our adjustable wrench. All right. And then what we're going to do is we're gonna push the wheel in, right? Because you saw a little bit of movement there. We're gonna push the wheel in and at the same time tighten it down as well. And then what I like to do is I just like to go kind of back and forth. Right, again, putting even pressure on these. Oops. Awesome. So now, before we install the mudguard, the backhand mudguard, right, we need to put these plates back on. And for these plates, that's for the wiring, right, so the wire does not hit the tire. Right, so there are little grooves for it, right. So what we're gonna do is we're going to put the wire into its grooves, right. So if you notice, right in here, there's a little groove for the wire to go into, right? So you're gonna pop it back into the spot there. Awesome. And then this wire on the backhand side, we're just gonna push it up so that it's in the little groove on this side as well, right? Once we do that, we're gonna grab our plate and our bolt. We're gonna put the bolt in at the same time as the washer. And then we're gonna grab our 4mm Allen key. Now we're just gonna tighten it down. Right, and we just want that to be snug. We don't want that to be too tight. Awesome, we're gonna grab our second parts, and this is gonna go right into the upper arm here. Make sure that the wire is all the way into its spot. Push our bolt through, and then put our plate. All right, so now just gonna tighten it down. Again, we don't wanna over tighten it because we don't wanna pinch the wire. Now, the last thing we have to do is install our rear mudguard, right? I'm gonna grab our 4 and then put it into here and then slide it right into there. All right, and so now again, we're just gonna go in a cross pattern. We don't wanna over tighten these bolts because they're clamping on to plastic. All right, and we don't want that plastic to break on there. That is it. So that is the full installation of the winter tires on the backhand side.
Excellent. Yeah, I definitely couldn't have done this. There's no question. I would have been throwing it around and been like, oh shit. Okay. But no, this is fantastic. So this took maybe about 20 minutes, but you know, yeah. Excellent. And if you happen to find any of this interesting, or more importantly, if you want to collaborate, check out the link below so that you can send us your comments, any stories you may have, anything, we're happy to entertain it. And this is really about us going on a journey together.